I'd like to welcome all of you today for joining us for a nominating committees and elections training. I'm really happy that you all could take the time to join us today. And I hope that you learn everything that you need to know from our great leaders at 33rd District on this subject. You'll have Vera Johnson, our district PTA parliamentarian, as well as Gerard Greenidge, our PTA Director of Communications, to guide us through this presentation today. So at this time, I would like to hand this over to Marcy, and she will tell us about the logistics.
Hi, I'm Marcy Cottrell. I'm the Director of Leadership for 33rd District PTA. Just a couple logistics as we go over a Zoom meeting for our Zoom meeting today. We ask that you keep yourself muted while our speakers are speaking. There'll be time for questions. If you could throw your questions in the chat, that would be great. I'll be monitoring the chat and I'll throw the questions over to Gerard and to Vera. I'd like to introduce our speakers this morning. Couple of things I forgot. Questions, please go in the chat. This Zoom meeting is being recorded. We will be putting this up on our website as soon as we can. And then also, you should have maybe a few minutes ago gotten the handouts from this meeting. They were emailed to you this morning. And then also, just a couple of things. Let me introduce our speakers this morning. This is Vera Johnson, our 33rd District parliamentarian, and Gerard Greenidge, who's our 33rd District Director of Communications. They're both going to present a little bit about nominating committees and elections. Thanks so much.
Next slide, please.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, all. Can someone please, there you go. Hi, everyone. I'm Vera, and I'm the 33rd District PTA parliamentarian. Nominations and elections. The process that your PTA uses to identify and elect officers is very important to the strength and future of the organization. Following the bylaws and procedures assure elections are not challenged and that the entire membership has confidence and supports the new officers. It is critical that the same procedure is followed each time. This is one of those situations where an individual's feelings can be hurt and that can affect their perspective of PTA. Next slide, please. The association has the responsibility to elect the nominating committee at an association meeting held at least 60 days prior to the election meeting. This is to ensure adequate time for the process and notifications. The parliamentarian should read the appropriate article and sections of the bylaws regarding the nominating committee. The bylaws tell you how many members and how many alternates are elected to the nominating committee. It is a unique committee in that it is elected by the association and not appointed by the president and ratified. Committee members must be PTA members for at least 30 days. Members may not serve for 2 consecutive years. The current unit president may not be elected to serve on the committee. The parliamentarian may be elected and serve if they were not on the previous committee. And the committee serves until the election. If a nominee withdraws before the election, the committee must reconvene to consider other qualified candidates. The parliamentarian will meet with the newly elected committee to arrange their first meeting. This will give instructions in procedure. They will give instructions in procedure and conduct the election of the committee chair. If the parliamentarian is not on the committee, they should be available by phone for any questions that the committee might come across. The nominating committee meets in executive session, which means that all discussions and deliberations are confidential. If an elected member or members cannot attend the first meeting, an alternate or alternates are called in and they become the permanent members of the nominating committee. This is only done at the first meeting. Any subsequent meeting absences are not filled by alternates. Next slide, please. Nominating committee members must be knowledgeable about PTA and aware of potential nominees. Members of the nominating committee are expected to understand and appreciate the duties and requirements of board positions, skill sets and time commitment needed for each position, the consideration of potential nominees based on abilities, as well as capacity for leadership and future growth, a selection of a slate of officers which reflects your school's community, and the importance of keeping all discussions and deliberations confidential. The president conducts the election of the nominating committee and appoints a teller committee of 3, one of whom is the chair. Nominations are taken from the floor and the nominee must be present to accept. Self-nominations are also acceptable. The names of all nominees should be posted so that meeting attendees can see them. The recording secretary should verify membership and distribute blank ballots to voting members. Once all ballots are distributed, the president counts the voting members. Voting members are asked to list the same number of nominated names as the number of nominating committee members. So for example, if you have 3 members of your nominating committee, you will ask all of the voting members to list 3 names from the nominees. The tellers then collect the ballots, and those getting the most votes for the committee positions become the members, with the next in line becoming the alternate or alternates. Next slide, please. The parliamentarian should provide the committee with a toolkit, unit bylaws, and a list of elected positions and qualifications. The secretary should provide them with a current membership list and directory. The committee should strive to select the best candidates who reflect the makeup of the school community. They should consider new members as well as those that have experience. Next slide, please. The nominating committee should consider candidates who are enthusiastic and supportive of your PTA and your school community. Do they work well with others? Do they have a sense of teamwork and inclusiveness? Can they focus on students and the greater good rather than what's in it for them? Are they dependable and willing to devote the time necessary to do a good job? Are they willing to attend training and meetings? Do they have special skills, knowledge, or experience to share with your PTA? Financial or technical computer skills would fall into this category. Some important considerations may include PTA term limits. A member can only serve 2 consecutive years in a position. School staff. Although we do appreciate school staff and welcome them to PTA, it is important to have a majority of parents, guardians on the elected board. Students are also encouraged to be officers in our middle and high school units if they are qualified. And financial officers can sometimes be hard to find. 33rd District will be providing financial workshops starting this April to provide entry-level training for treasurers, financial secretaries, and auditors. These trainings will be recorded and made available to all members. Next slide, please. When talking to potential candidates, committee members should be prepared to provide information on the duties of the position and details on expectations and time commitments, including meetings and training. Be sure to ask the same set of questions of each candidate for a specific position. Ask if they are willing to serve, but do not make any promises. Never try to persuade a reluctant candidate to serve. This never works out well. Get back to all individuals interviewed after the decision is made. Before placing a name and nomination on the slate, the consent of each nominee is required. If the nominating committee is unable to find a candidate for a specific office, it is best to leave the office vacant. During the election, nominations will be taken from the floor, or the board-elect can fill any vacant positions as outlined in your bylaws. Next slide, please. The nominating committee report should be completed by the chair and signed by all committee members. The chair reads the report or the slate at an association meeting at least 28 days prior to the election meeting. The report may be mailed or emailed to members and may be posted on campus. Just keep in mind that you should use the information distribution method that you are currently using to your membership. The chair also reads the final report or the slate at the annual association or election meeting just prior to the election. The slate read at the election meeting may be an amended slate if there were any changes, such as withdrawals or previously vacant positions filled with new nominees by the nominating committee. Next slide. Now's a good time to probably pause for questions since we're going to talk about elections.
So Vera, there's a couple questions. One is regarding signatures of the nominating committee, given our virtual environment, can these be e-signatures?
Yes, they can be e-signatures if you do have a program and application to do that for you. Another option is to send the PDF, have a member sign, scan it, send it on, back to the chair sends it back out to the next person. Since your nominating committee is a relatively small committee, usually between 3 and 5 members, that shouldn't be too difficult to do.
Second question, we might need a little clarification from Anita. How is that done on Zoom? Anita, can you clarify?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just typing that in. The voting, the counting of the votes on Zoom when it's more than one candidate.
Actually, Gerard is going to do a great presentation how to do voting on Zoom, and that'll be at the end. So
Perfect, thanks.
Great question. But yeah, and we anticipated this, so that's why Gerard is also a presenter for this workshop.
One more question. What is the role of the alternate? Do they attend meetings other than the first if another is absent?
If a member is absent, the alternate attends the meeting and becomes the member of the nominating committee. They would become a member and they would attend any future meetings. So the person who is absent is technically out.
Okay, one more question I see. Do we have to have a nominating committee? We are having a huge problem with getting volunteers in general.
Good question. And this came up at the state training that I attended last week. It is preferable to have a nominating committee so they can do a great job and seek great candidates to fill your officer spots. But if you are unable to put together and elect a nominating committee, then the election still takes place. You still give notice of the election, but all nominations will come from the floor.
Another one, can a meeting deny a nomination? I guess I'm assuming a nominating committee, can they deny a nomination?
They can only deny, and they would consider all nominees in executive session, which means they would deliberate and confidentially discuss the qualifications. If the nominee is a member, they have to be a member for 30 days. They can nominate themselves from the floor. And in that case, if you have a nominee on the slate put forth by the nominating committee and someone nominates themselves from the floor, that would become a ballot vote.
That's all I see for right now. I think there might be a question on how to elect alternates. Like, how do we elect alternates?
When you elect the nominating committee, you would ask your voting body to list the number of nominees for the nominating committee on the ballot slip. So for example, if you have 3 members of your nominating committee and 1 alternate in your bylaws, you would ask, the president would ask the voting body to write down 3 names. The tellers would then count the ballots, and the folks with the top 3 votes become the nominating committee. The next in line, the one with the 4th most votes in this example with 3 committee members and 1 alternate, becomes the alternate. If you have 2 alternates, it'd be the 4th and the 5th.
I see another question. What about if someone is nominated for a seat that's currently filled?
If someone is nominated for a seat that's currently filled,
I think they mean if it's a seat that's on the slate.
is that what?
Can you clarify, Lauren? It's Lauren.
Yeah.
Brown.
Yeah, so what I've been told, because this is my first year participating in this, is that all of the board positions would be considered for nominations, even those that currently have people that are in those positions.
That is correct. And I'm going to talk more about that during the election. But even if there is a slate which is full with a name for each position must be open to nominations from the floor. And that is in our bylaws, that requirement. If you do, then if it results in 2 or more people being nominated for a particular position, then the election for that position has to be a ballot vote.
Okay, and then I just have one more question since I've got the floor for a second here. We've determined our nominating committee. For example, my group is going to be meeting tonight. Do we have to submit the names of those who are on the nominating committee to anyone? I'm not really sure how that works.
Once the nominating committee completes its job and you have a nominee for each position, then you would put together the report of the nominating committee. And that report is presented at an association meeting, which is at least 28 days before the election.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
I don't see any more questions. I think we can move on. Thanks.
I got a question, Vera. Is it a bad idea to advertise who's on the nominating committee?
No, it's not. It's not a bad idea to advertise that. It's not a secret process. Nominating committee members are elected by the association. So that is perfectly fine. Any other questions? Okay, then we'll move on to the election of officers. The bylaws and standing rules in the newer versions list the month and day of your annual association meeting or the election meeting. The bylaws also state which officers are elected and who has the right to vote. It is the responsibility of the general membership or association to provide a quorum for the election meeting and to participate actively in the election process. The quorum number is listed in your bylaws, Article 7. The secretary should have a current membership list that will be the official checklist to determine those who have been members for at least 30 days. If this list is not available, all present can vote, but this is clearly not preferred since voting is a membership benefit. Voting by proxy is not allowed. Members must be present to vote. So you can't send your husband if he's not a member, or send your neighbor to the meeting to vote on your behalf. Nominations must be taken from the floor for all positions during the election process. The secretary must also be prepared with ballots on hand in the event of a ballot vote. Slips of colored paper are preferable, with a different color used for each ballot vote. Next slide, please. Meeting procedures. The president presides over the election with the election of officers listed under new business on the agenda. The president asks the parliamentarian to read the parts of the bylaws which pertain to elections. The president then asks the chair of the nominating committee to read their report. The chair reads the report and highlights any changes if they are presenting an amended slate. The president then rereads the report of the nominating committee and asks each nominee to stand. The president then states, according to our bylaws, nominations from the floor are now in order. For president, let's say Donald Duck is nominated. Are there further nominations from the floor? Then they wait a few minutes for a response. Then state, seeing none, the nominations for president are now closed. The president then goes through each elected position, including any vacant ones, asking for nominations from the floor. A nomination from the floor requires the members' consent. You have an election script in your handouts that were sent out this morning that has this and more detailed information that you can refer to. Next slide, please. Election by voice vote. If there is only one candidate for each office, the president then reads the candidates and offices and states, as there are single candidates for each office, we will conduct the elections by voice vote. Are there any objections to this procedure? If there is an objection, a ballot vote must be held, even with only one candidate for each office. If none, the president continues saying, all those in favor of electing Donald Duck as president, Minnie Mouse as executive vice president, etc., going through all candidates, say aye. Those against say no. The president then states that the ayes have it and you have elected the following officers. The president then restates the names and the offices of those elected, and the voice vote election is concluded. You may also use the voice vote for the uncontested positions, those where there's but one candidate, and have ballot votes for those that have two or more nominees. Next slide, please. Election by ballot. The president should appoint a tellers committee of 3 with one as chair before the election should there be a need for a ballot vote. A nominee for an office may not be involved in the election process. Each nominee may designate a person to observe the ballot count. If a member requests a ballot vote for any office, their request must be recognized and the election is held by ballot. A nominee must receive 50% plus 1 of votes cast to win the election. When there are 2 or more nominees for an office, the election is held by ballot. For in-person meetings, the secretary should have a membership list and eligibility should be checked for each member. A voting card may be distributed to all eligible voters to facilitate the distribution of ballots should the need arise. We do this at our district meetings. If you've attended, when you come to the meeting, when we've had them in person, you check in with our credential committee and they would then check you have a membership card that's current and give you a voting card. We'll go over the virtual voting procedures in the next slide with Gerard. In the event of a controversial election, be sure to enlist the assistance of your council or district PTA. Prior to the vote, the president requests that all eligible to vote rise and be counted. This count determines the number of votes to be tallied. Tellers will then distribute, collect, and count the ballots. The president or presiding officer may vote at the same time as other members. Tellers will be instructed that blank ballots are not counted and that illegal ballots are counted to determine the number of votes cast, but are not applied as a vote to or against any nominee. Ballots are illegal and not counted if they are illegible, they contain the name of a nominee who is not a member, or if 2 or more ballots are folded together. The teller committee chair reports the election result in writing. The report should include the number eligible to vote, the number of votes cast, the number needed to elect, which would be 50% of the votes cast plus 1, the number received by each candidate, and the number of illegal ballots. If one nominee does not receive a majority of votes cast, the process is repeated, starting with the counting of eligible voters. Someone may have left the meeting and that number might change. The nominees stay the same unless one of them chooses to withdraw. Unless requested, the president only announces who has been elected to the office. The complete teller's report must be recorded in the minutes. The teller committee chair then makes a motion to destroy the ballots. Again, it is permissible to have a voice vote for uncontested positions and a ballot vote for those that have 2 or more nominees. Also, it's important to remember that a challenge to the outcome of the election must be made during the election meeting prior to the adjournment of the meeting. Next slide, please. Gerard, you're up. Gerard, you're muted.
All right, so like Vera's pointed out so far, it takes a lot of planning to get an election meeting successfully completed. One of the main things now that we're in a virtual world is really getting RSVPs for the people who are going to attend the meeting. So posting the slate 30 days in advance and then publicizing your meeting is, I think, one of the key things for all of our units to do. Once your board, your executive board has come up with the tellers and who's going to run the meeting, I'm going to show you some of the settings that you'll need inside of Zoom and Google Meet to be able to at least prepare ahead of time so that you can set up things like breakout rooms for people who are not voting members and those who are voting members. I'm gonna show you how you set up the polls inside of Zoom. So Melanie, I'm gonna try to share my screen. I think we're gonna need to stop sharing your screen and then I should be able to share my screen. I'm going to share my desktop. Hold on one second. I'm getting rid of some of these windows so I can actually see. Yeah, this is it. Okay, so one of the things that we have inside of Zoom, inside your Zoom account, there's this section called polls and quizzes. And what you'll notice is that in here, I've set up the treasurer, And I've added Vera and Gerard. And so you can do this ahead of time. I would say use your slate as the way to set this up ahead of time so that you can include the person on the slate. And, you know, if like Vera mentioned, if everything goes without challenge to any of the positions, you could probably just elect the treasurer in this case with a voice vote. But in this case, let's say Vera wants the position, and I'm going to say Melanie in here. And so we're going to add these 3 people to this particular question. I'll take a step back and let me do it this way. So in Zoom, there's an option to create advanced polls. And that's the feature that you're going to want to make sure is turned on. And if you have any questions about this after the fact, you guys can reach out to me. I can go in here and I can say, you know, we're going to elect the secretary. I'm going to change this to secretary as well. And say Marcy, say Vera. Oh boy. And again, Melanie. All right. And so I'm not going to make it required, because if I make it required, then I don't allow people to abstain from voting. So in here, I can check the option to allow participants to answer questions anonymously. And what that does, it makes it so that your vote isn't shown to the public when we actually show the results. So I can check that. And so now I have treasurer, president, secretary, and communications VP. So Melanie, you want to go ahead and launch the secretary poll that I just put up?
I was just denied. Hang on just a second.
Okay. So as a participant in this meeting, you should see an option for you to be able to vote.
Please bear with us 1 second while we figure this out. I apologize.
You'll notice what it says here. Older versions of Zoom won't be able to participate. So again, part of the preparation for your meeting is letting your members know, if you know you're going to be using the Zoom platform, please let them know what their requirements are as far as their software on their computer, because these features only work in the newest or newer versions of Zoom. And so how are we doing, Melanie?
I'm being told that I'm logged in from another device and my polling session isn't active. So we're
Okay.
hang on just a second. I do apologize, everybody. This is part of the thrill.
Yes. Well, this is one of the things that can happen.
Gerard, I believe I launched it.
You launched it?
I think I did.
Okay.
I see it.
Okay. So if you see it, could you go ahead and vote? Now, one of the things I want to mention is that in the situation where you have people who are non-voting members as part of the group, what you want to do is you want to probably put them in a waiting room, or you want to set up a breakout room and put them in a separate space where they're not able to participate in the vote. So again, this is it's going to take a lot of coordination. You might have to have multiple hosts like we do right now, and so that everyone can chip in a little bit to help make the process as easy as possible. Again, this is just for the cases where you may have a challenge, multiple people trying to seek the same position. You could also use it for items that you need to vote on in the middle of your meeting. So this is the, okay. Thank you for launching it, Julie. And at some point, you can, after you see enough responses, you can actually click end poll. And we will actually, there's an option for you to be able to see the results. We ended. All right, perfect. And so you can see I'm going to be the treasurer. Now, Vera mentioned that, the president doesn't necessarily have to announce, the outcome of the vote. So you can choose not to show this, and only the host that has access to be able to see the results can say, hey, this is who won, and then the results get recorded in the meeting. You can see it; it's anonymous. There are no names, and assuming that all the people in the room are actually able to vote, you should have a valid election happen at that point. Now, the question that I get from some people is, well, I have a household, and there's me, my husband, and my auntie, and my sister, and everyone else. If they have a phone, they can join the meeting and they can vote using their own device, and that's how you kind of get around the situation where you may have multiple adults or voting members in the same household. Everyone, in order to be able to use this, everyone has to be able to connect to their individually. So there's no there's only one connection, one vote. That's how it's going to go. And assuming that you're doing it that way, that also means that the person in your household should also have their own individual RSVP, so that your tellers and the people running your election can verify that they're members. Okay, so you're asking who should be the host and do the polling. So one of the things that we mentioned is, reaching out to your council and reaching out to, to help with your elections. So this is something that you might want to coordinate with your council and find out, can they help with running the meeting? And so that way, it's not just the president, it's the president and maybe a couple council members that are there to help. I'm sure some of the folks at 33rd will help, some of those other units that may be out of council. So like Vera mentioned, it really, really, really takes some preparation to do elections right. And again, letting people know that it's okay to have multiple people on the ballot. I think that's one of the things that sometimes we shy away from. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing this screen and I'm going to share my other screen, which is where I'm going to show you Google Meet. All right, so let me see. You guys see my screen? All right. Okay, so Google Meet. I'm just going to go through for those units that have Google and Google Meet, and they use it. You can. You can create a Google meeting, and inside of Google Meet, there's an option to set up your host controls. And so you want to make sure you turn on your host management. That allows you to do certain things like only allow people who've joined the meeting to, you have to turn this off, by the way, to attend the meeting, or people to ask to join. So you don't get random people who show up and weren't invited to the meeting or didn't RSVP for the meeting. And then once you set that up, in here, if you have Google Meet for your nonprofit, you can go into the activities tab, and one of the options is polls and breakout rooms. What I've done is, created breakout rooms. So I'll go in here and I'll create a breakout room for the voting members. Hello, CD there. And then I'll create a breakout room for non-voting members. And the purpose of that is to, if I add, as people get added to the call, I can set up which room that they'll get put into when we actually activate the room. And again, this is something that, if you're working with your principal and they have Google Meet at the school, you're going to have to really coordinate with them to be able to kind of make this happen. So I can go ahead, set that up, and I can go back here and I can do the polls. And so again, ahead of time, I can say, okay, President, I've got Vera, and Vera's on the slate, and then I put Gerard in there, and I can save it, right? So I don't have to launch it right away. I can set this up ahead of time, go ahead and create all the polls that I want to use. And then in the meeting, when the president gets to the part where they say, okay, the president's position is up for election. Is there anyone coming in from the floor? And then Marcy says, hey, I want to be in there too. So I add Marcy really quickly. I save it. And then because I kind of already have people set up for the breakout rooms, I can move my voting members into the breakout rooms. Then I can actually launch this poll inside that breakout room with just the voting members. And so the people who are non-voting members, they can stay in the main room. They can go into the non-voting room and wait until the election is finished. And you can do that for every position as it comes up. Now, are we going to have a little bit of hiccups? Yeah, there's definitely going to be some technical difficulties, monkey wrench things happen. So the best advice is to be patient with it. If you can come up with some maybe icebreaker type things that people can do while they're waiting for the vote, that's always something else that you can add to it. Maybe you can put your hospitality person on that. But I'm gonna stop sharing. So that's using polls inside of Google Meet. And if I hit launch, the poll will launch, and you guys can't see it because you're not connected to my this meeting, but it will launch similar to the way it launched in Zoom. Everybody votes, and then you can either choose to show the results to everyone, or the president can just get a message from whoever's running the meeting to say, hey, here's who won. All right. Any questions for me at this point?
Let me go through a few questions. I'll go from the top down. Let me get back there. Sorry, it closed out my chat. Okay. Members nominated from the floor. Do members nominated from the floor, must members nominated from the floor be present in order to consent? So must they be present when you nominate them from the floor in order to consent to being nominated?
You want me
Yes.
to? Well, technically, they have to give their consent and it can be in writing. So if they can't make it, they can send an email ahead of time to the president, the presiding officer, letting them know that they would accept the nomination should they be nominated. So yes, it's fine.
Okay, so someone said you're giving us a lot of details that aren't in these bullet points. Can you tell us where to access all the details? If you're reading them from something, can you send that? I said, I kind of responded, a lot of this is in the handouts that we sent this morning. And then I also put up CAPTA's, the website for CAPTA's nominations and elections, and a lot of that is there too. So I would go there, right?
Perfect. Yeah.
I think you already answered this, Gerard. Can you use Google Form?
You know what? I don't advise using Google Forms. And the reason I wouldn't advise that is because you don't have any control over that link. You know, if I share a link in a meeting, there's nothing stopping someone from copying it and sending it to their friends. And so you really can't, you can't safely say that everyone who voted was really eligible to vote, right? And so you really want to encourage your members to show up at the meeting. You really want to encourage them to RSVP ahead of time so that you have an idea of kind of whether you're even going to meet quorum, because quorum is a big deal for our meetings.
There's another one. I don't know if you mentioned this already, but can we create these polls ahead of time with the nominating committee report?
Yes, so that was one of the things I was stressing, is that if you do enough advanced planning, the meeting should go pretty smoothly, because you can use the slate to pre-populate all of the positions. You know, when you're doing this, you have to have two names. So you might want to just, you know, put in a temporary name until you actually get someone coming in from the floor, or if you get, you know, an advance notice that, hey, I'm gonna also nominate myself from the floor. If you tell the president ahead of time, they can pre-populate you as well.
Next question. Do we have to set this up under meeting leader's Zoom account, or the meeting leader's Zoom account?
So whoever is your Zoom admin, that's the person you need to work with to get this set up. So it's definitely a team effort. You know, in this case, I have access to the Zoom admin for 33rd. And so, you know, I can work with Vera and we can get some of this stuff set up ahead of time for our meeting. But it's definitely a group effort to make this work.
Can all hosts see the results, or everyone attending the meeting on Zoom?
All the co-hosts will see the results, yes. And again, this is, you know, I know sometimes you get into situations where maybe someone who's already in a position, they're also running and they're on a nominating committee. This is where you can reach out to your council and maybe have your council run the meeting for you at that point.
Who should be the host and do the polling?
So again, I would suggest you get some help from your council. If you have someone that's really technical, they can work with your council person, your council folks to coordinate.
A few more questions. I have a question. Sorry if this topic passed, but I'm currently on the nominating committee. At the association meeting, we rarely have membership attend. Due to the bylaw of executive board members cannot be the only ones on the committee. We have a couple members that will be on the committee. The question I have is, they are former board members that resigned the position this year. And as I am seeing ballots casted anonymous, it looks like they are trying to turn over the current board. I question the integrity. How do we handle a situation that might be prickly?
I think my advice is usually, we have a healthy PTA survey that talks about healthy PTAs that actually bring in other people. You're open and you try to get other people involved. The people who are already on the executive committee, it's not their PTA. Every year you have a new board, and that, as Vera mentioned in one of the slides, you want to consider new people as well as experienced people. And the independence of the nominating committee is really key to trying to find the right fit for the positions on the board.
If I can also chime in, I think within the question, there was a statement about executive board members cannot be on the nominating committee. That is not true. As long as they did not serve on the previous nominating committee, they can be a member of the nominating committee, with the exception of the president. The president can never be a member of the nominating committee. If there are issues with nominating committee, putting together a nominating committee and it doesn't work out during an association meeting, there aren't enough people who are willing to serve, all elections will then be held from nominations from the floor. So that is the only solution there.
Okay. Can you send out the Zoom instructions for setting up the virtual election?
I would say we can, we'll post this video on YouTube. I could probably do a mini video for those who are interested. I would say, send me an email and let me talk with you maybe one-on-one, just to make sure that you have the right level of Zoom, and that you actually have the settings to use the advanced polling feature.
Okay, what if the count is challenged?
If the count is challenged and the count has been shared, the president only has to announce the winner for that particular office, the candidate that has won. At that point, I would say share the other results, the number, the counted house, what the votes were for each candidate, as well as the illegal votes. If there is still a question, and hopefully this is still within the same meeting, because once a meeting is concluded, you cannot challenge the results, but it has to be within the election meeting prior to the adjournment of that meeting. I would recommend to revote at that point, if it's possible.
Do you need a motion to revote?
Yes.
Okay. Do you advise the president and parliamentarian practice the script before the election meeting?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes. One of the handouts is the election script, and everything I went over is there in writing. So I would strongly recommend practicing.
And it's a good time to test out your polls and see how everything works, so that you're ready to go for your actual association meeting. I've been a president, so I get that. It's hard.
Definitely. A practice session, especially if you're going to do it on Zoom, is highly advisable. Get your board to log in, practice with the board, so that you're comfortable when it's time to do the actual election meeting.
Yeah, and you have your slate already at that point, right? So you have your slate 30 days in advance. and the ideal scenario. And so you have time to set a couple, what I call dry run meetings.
Somebody runs from the floor.
Yeah, I mean, do it just like I just demonstrated, you get in there and you play around with it and you test it out. And yeah.
Okay. I was told that we needed 5 members on the nominating committee and 2 alternates. Says it was me that said earlier that 3 to 5 is okay. Is that correct?
You have to go with what's in your bylaws. A lot of our bylaws have 3, a lot of them have 5 with 2 alternates. It depends when you're writing when you're updating your bylaws, you might want to consider that. And what you might want to look at is what your normal general membership population is. How many members do you generally have from year to year?
Does it happen? It does happen that there are divisions in a nominating committee. In that case, the majority rules?
Yes. The nominating committee operates as a regular committee. Someone should be taking notes of the committee deliberations. You do have to vote, and the majority rules. And that's the reason why we go with an odd number. We go with 3, 5. In some of our councils that are bigger, they have 7. But yes, the majority always rules. If it so happens, I don't think I mentioned this, but if it so happens that one of the members of the nominating committee is nominated for an office, they must recuse themselves, leave the meeting for any discussions, deliberations, as well as the voting.
I'm going to take a couple more questions. Do you have more workshop after this, Vera?
Do I have what?
You have more to your more slides and work?
No, this is the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll take a few more questions. I want to be respectful of your time. So are we going to have access to the recordings of this meeting? If so, where can we access them? Jared, you're putting them on YouTube. We'll send an email.
Yeah, so we have a YouTube channel. I'm just going to send you straight to YouTube. I'm not going to ask you to go to 33rd and figure out where it is on the website. So just go to the YouTube channel. Got how many people do I have in here? Oh, we got 53 people. So I should have 53 new subscribers after this meeting to the YouTube channel. Right, Julie? Yeah, Julie's smiling. So yeah, so go to the YouTube channel. I dropped the link in the chat, and hit the subscribe button, and we'll do a premiere on this, an instant premiere when it's actually posted.
I'm going to do one more question, and then if you have any more questions, you can email us at either training or Vera as our parliamentarian. Those emails are posted in the chat, or you can email Gerard, and we'll try to get those questions answered as best we can and as quickly as we can.
And I'm interested in hearing, your election stories. So if you want to share your successes, your struggles, your confusion, just shoot me an email.
So here's the last question. I'm confused on the role of the nominating committee. In the past, our nominating committee chooses the best candidate for each position. What I gather here today is that that is not what the nominating committee does. So what would be their role? Do they simply gather nominations and make the ballots?
No, the nominating committee's role is to choose the best candidate for each position in their opinion. They would actually create the slate and with one name for each position. Then during the election, all nominations are open to the floor for each position. So nominations can still be made, and there could be other candidates that would challenge the nominee provided by the nominating committee.
I also want to add that, the nomination committee has to post the slate 30 days ahead of the election. So their deadlines sometimes don't match a person's ability to know whether they're able to commit for a position or not. And so the ability to nominate yourself or nominate someone else from the floor is the way that you can get additional people at the meeting, because when you have a tight schedule to really come up with who the slate is, the nomination committee just has to do their best job. They may have a really good candidate, but that person may say, hey, you know, I don't know right now. And their response doesn't come back by the deadline to actually submit to the nominating committee. So, you know, you can't discount that person. So they would be one of those people that might contact you later and say, you know, I know the slate's posted, but I actually do want to fill that vacant position that's on there. And so they'll have to be nominated from the floor.
So if that's the case, how do you know you need to make ballots prior?
Should always be prepared to do a ballot vote. You don't always know when you may have someone who decides to nominate themselves from the floor, or have someone nominate someone from the floor to challenge a particular candidate in a particular position. So that is just a good thing to do to prepare for the meeting.
Yeah. And if you have your RSVPs, that you kind of have an idea of what the count is for your ballots. Not saying you just have that many, but I think ahead of time, you'll know.
So I want to just say thank you for attending our mini workshop. I know elections are coming up and they're hard. So if you have any additional questions, again, email Vera, email myself, email Gerard. We'll get back to you as soon as we can with to answer your questions. If you have more questions about Zoom, Gerard's the guy.
Hey, Marcy, Melanie, can we share that last slide?
Oh, sorry.
I just want to make sure we capture it in the video.
Okay. And so I'm going to say the best way to get in touch with us is via email. Also, like our Instagram page or our Facebook page, we've been posting a lot more information there so that you can find it quickly.
Hey, there we go.
Perfect. So thank you for attending, and good luck on your elections and with your nominating committees.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.